Hello there, people, and welcome back to Spiteful Lovers in a Perfect World. And we're about to cross-examine. Uh, we're about to cross-examine Sophie's crush, her long-time crush librarian, who we thought was the killer, and now we think isn't the killer. And how about that, actually? Because last time I was, thinking maybe her plan is to sort of drag the trial out by coming up with this confession, sort of, make sure there's a way of finding the true killer. And now I'm starting to think she actually did do what she said she did, but that, someone else met up with it, probably Ollie, and that. Or maybe not Ollie, actually. But Ollie definitely did lie, according to our current theory. But I'm thinking because he must have done something to save Brighton. So we'll keep an eye out for that. And keep an eye out for anyone else potentially being culpable. Because we don't want our crush to be imprisoned with charge of murder, which... Is there a death penalty in this universe, or is it imprisonment for 500 years or so? Anyway, let's go.
Hold it.
Why do you continue to reject the possibility? You must admit something's up. Why else would both the serums be red? I already told you, Ophelia made a benign little mistake. That's simple. Unlikely, she's a professional. Is someone else pulling the strings likelier to you? You're the one who accused me in the first place, You can't backpedal away from that. Sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes people make the worst possible mistake. I was wrong, Paula. Don't you get it? I insist upon my guilt because it's the truth. When you accused me, you came one step closer to uncovering that truth. I bet you're right, but not for the reasons you think you are.
Hold it.
Out of curiosity, what are the chances you get out of a situation like that unscathed? I guess it's not likely. Different patients can have different severity of reaction. It's entirely possible that the fails wouldn't react any differently than normal. That didn't answer my question, And what if it is not likely? Wouldn't be the only exceptional thing about him. I'm guessing she's not talking about his so-called genius. So likely, it's as if your theory is much likelier anyway. And I looked up this up using the greatest source of all time, Wikipedia, and it said 41% of people who get the wrong blood type in a transfusion have that kind of reaction. So it's not, it's not impossible that he could have not got it. Perhaps not, but at worst it just leaves us at a stalemate. Oh, I wouldn't say that. Maybe this will change your mind.
Hold it.
Those glove marks prove someone other than Ophelia physically touched the syringes. Your plan, which only involves changing their colour, does not require you to touch them. As a matter of fact, it would be counterproductive for you to do so, as it would leave evidence. So yes, I would be shocked if you were able to explain them. It's not required, but it sure does make my job a whole lot easier. What, did you want me to puncture those syringes by only seeing their silhouette through the bags? I didn't want you to puncture the syringes at all, Paula. I know. And yet I was too stubborn to change my mind, even after you decided to tag along. Hold on, I won't let you turn this into a self-pity party. Wasn't it part of your plan to have someone along anyway? That's how you're able to meddle without being caught by Ophelia or your brother. So I don't see what my presence would have done to dissuade you. So right through me, huh? Yeah. If you hadn't offered, I would have just asked. So that's how it is.
Hold it.
And where was this in your original testimony? If he really left those marks, I feel like he would have mentioned that from the start. It slipped my mind. Is that a crime? Murder is certainly a crime at the least. Oops, poor choice of words. She's trying to argue. Yeah, she's trying to argue she just touched him anyway, even though there would have been no reason to. You forgot? It can't be that simple. We already know how bad memory can be in this day and age. Yes, but that's long-term, not short-term memory. I may not remember 50 years in the past, but I remember what happened last week. This was only a few days ago. You should remember it perfectly well. Seems like they got used to the whole memory thing fairly quickly. It was a very hectic day. I feel like everything went by so fast, so my mind's hazy. Plus, I do remember while aren't exactly relevant to the murder. Your mind's hazy. So are you recalling this or deducing it? Because if it's the latter, that deduction can easily be wrong. You should keep that in mind.
Hold it.
If you did that, you would have seen what colours the serums were. If your confession is consistent with the facts, that will be clear and clear. Surely you would have noticed this discrepancy? Perhaps not. I may have been too swept up in the moment to realise. You say that like you're not sure. If you want me to be honest, I'm not. But what other explanation is there? Besides your theory that I'm innocent, don't get me started on that. And I won't. Instead, I'll just ask you to elaborate. How and where did you meddle with the serums? So like I said before, I touched both of them at different times. The immortality serum in the hall, and the death serum in Brighton's hospital room. Do you mind adding both of these statements to your testimony for the sake of completeness? I already said it last testimony, but sure. Your arguments changed since then. The context is different. Hopefully the result is too. First, I did this with the immortality serum in the hallway while you were talking to Ophelia.
Hold it.
And what would you have done if I hadn't decided to come with you to the hospital? I was going to ask you to if you didn't volunteer, and the push came to shove, I had a backup plan. Nothing fancy. Actually, it was pretty similar to what you thought the killer used as an opportunity. I was just going to accidentally drop some glass and cause a commotion. Like what happened with the beaker? Right, so you see I have more than one way to pull off my plot. I see. Carry on.
Hold it.
As I see your eyes, that may not have been the death serum at all. If someone sold the syringes beforehand, it may have actually been the immortality serum. I'm not going to argue with you about this. If you think that's what happened, you can think that. As far as I'm concerned, that was a death serum. It was for Brighton, who was meant to die. You didn't, because of your own actions. I don't deny this. It's true, I got in the way of what he wanted, but that wasn't my aim in doing this. I took advantage of not only Sophie, but my own brother, all to get the man I despise killed. That's despicable. I agree. I'm not concerned with the morality of it, though. Maybe I should. I just can't accept that you're the monster you claim to be, Power. Did I read this one? I had the same thing with the death serum until she brought into my brother's room. I had to touch both items directly to do this. That's when I left the glove marks. That's funny. I remember you wearing gloves at that point. You don't? But I must have been. Surely, right? You're tripped up by something this simple? Ah, you're right. Why am I surprised? You say you didn't see me wearing gloves, Sophie. But can you prove it? Prove it? What do you mean? I can't go on just one person's word, especially someone biased like you. I don't believe you, Sophie. Don't believe me? Seriously? You were there. You even told me yourself. Was that you, Paula? No, I wasn't wearing gloves. I never touched those bags. It's not like I physically handed those bags to Ophelia. I just gestured over to them. Did I? I'm afraid I don't recall. I'm afraid we're just showing where to go on this line. I can't accept what you say. Are you serious, Pala? You really don't remember? Or are you so convinced of your guilt, you're blocking off any evidence to the contrary? Either way, I'll prove you wrong. You can't be telling the truth, even if only I remember it. Is the memory loss that she has really that bad that she somehow is convinced that she pulled off this plot when in actuality she didn't? That'd be wild, actually. But according to what Factoris says, it's not how the mind thing is supposed to work. But maybe there's something strange with the immortality serum that intentionally does something to your memory. Who knows? Or maybe the true mastermind did something to affect her memory and make her think she pulled off this plot. When actually she literally didn't do anything. She's only putting this together, and she's convinced now that she did.
Hold it.
But the fact is, he must have lied. He says he saw a red serum in the immortality bag and a clear serum in the death bag. No matter which way you slice it, that's impossible. Impossible for your own pet theory, perhaps. No, impossible for your confession, too. The only way you can reconcile both serums being red is if Ophelia accidentally put death in both. But if she did this, Ollie wouldn't have seen a red and a clear serum. He would have seen two clear serums. Then one of the syringes already had a hole in it from the beginning. Ridiculous. When you punctured the syringe yourself later, it would have left a second hole. And if I'd just used the same hole. You see, lightning never strikes in the same place twice, but that's a lie. Think of lightning rods. If something is conducive enough, it's very common for lightning to strike many times in that spot. The same principle applies here. If there was already a divot, it'd be easy to puncture the same spot. Now your theory is just relying on pure happenstance. Is it? This also explains why I didn't find anything odd about the serum's colours when I looked. I think this puzzle piece actually fits together quite nicely. After all, as Mix Factora said, the serums were carried alongside several sharp instruments. I did not mean for that to be interpreted in this way. Regardless, Miss Lang, these petty points aren't adding up to anything. If you wish to disprove the witness's confession, you must find something more conclusive. You heard the judge. Pala continues to insist upon her guilt. Just make yourself quickly. I need to disprove her confession. Only then will she hopefully see reason. But I have a feeling it won't be easy. All one and done. Oh, they had no reason to lie about what you saw, did he? I guess not. You're wrong, Pala. I know you're innocent. Pathetic act of bravado. You will not accomplish anything with that measly piece of evidence. Well, I'd like to see you do any better. Shouldn't you also be trying to prove Pala's innocence? But, well! It's not the time for petty disputes. It's true that Mix Factora has failed to substantiate their case. However, though a not guilty verdict seems assured, Miss Lang is still making flawed arguments. As such, I hand down a penalty. At least give one to Factora too. Fair's fair. Well, Factora didn't make any stupid objections. Nope. How is it not this? Because this only has one set of glove marks. This one has two. I thought I was onto something with all this.
Hold it.
So did he see two red serums? And if he saw two red serums, that's a clever one actually. But I feel like the other one should have worked as well. Pella, can you confirm something for me? Dawn? The gloves you used in the murder, they came from a glove dispenser found at the hospital, correct? I've never known you to wear gloves of your own after all. Yeah, I don't own any gloves, so you must be right. Must be? Wouldn't you know? Get on with it, defense! Of course, these glove dispensers are found in the patient's rooms. Only the patient's rooms, nowhere else. Did you get it now? You wouldn't have had access to those gloves before entering your brother's room, meaning you couldn't have left glove marks while you were in the hallway. What the? Actually, yeah, I think you're right. You do? So you admit you're innocent? I never said that. I'll get my hopes up. I just made a mistake is all. You're right, I didn't touch the syringe with the immortality serum. Ah, that doesn't matter. Because the glove marks on that could have easily come from Ophelia. The only thing Ophelia never touched was my brother's syringe. But by the time I had to tamper with that, I was already in his room, glove dispenser in reach. You're changing your testimony? Just like that? To be honest, it sounds like you're talking theoretically. Do you even believe what you're saying? Are you able to disprove it? Your behavior is suspect in Sweden. However, I am forced to concede. If neither side is able to come up with a suitable counter-argument, you remain the prime suspect. Do not test my patience. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't count me out just yet. I'll just have to find another flaw with your testimony. I invite you to try. She hasn't really changed the testimony. That's a little more.
Hold it. Objection. Objection. Objection.
Since you got the syringe in advance. It's not work. There has to be something on this, but I've tried presenting what I think is his reason. No. Also, 1 year away from being in the year 25. The bags have holes in themselves.
Objection.
Open it there. You took the syringes out of the respective bags. Is that a fact? Must be. How else would I have left those glove marks? How indeed. I must say, if it turns out this wasn't the case at all, that must make you innocent, no? What do you mean to say? I can prove that the holes in the syringes were made while they were still inside the bags. With the bags themselves. Oh, go on then, Miss Lang. It couldn't be simpler. The same holes seen on the syringes can also be found in the bags. Same size and everything, so we can infer they were likely made at the same time. But were they? Let me ask you this, would anyone in their right mind make a random hole in the bags without a reason? No, I suppose they wouldn't. And if that wasn't you, they'd have to coincidentally use the same size needle to make the holes. And if it was you, it makes even less sense. It adds nothing to your plan but wasted time. The only explanation is that you did indeed puncture the syringes while they were in the bags. Therefore, Pala, you can't have left the glove marks like you claim. There you have it, Pala. Surely this proves your innocence. Actually, there's a very easy explanation for that. Seriously? Seems I made a mistake. I can't have taken the syringes out of the bags. You're right. However, I could still touch the syringes while they were inside. And why would you have done such a thing? Merely to keep them in place as I punctured through the bags. I wouldn't want them flying off without being tampered with, right? Strictly unnecessary. The bags themselves already keep the syringes in place well enough. Perhaps you're right, but better safe than sorry, eh? Sorry, but I can't let that slide. What do you mean? Well, that's the second time you've changed your testimony on us. You seem to be ship of Theseus in your testimony until it gets rid of all the contradictions. It makes me wonder, Miss Whedon, are you really telling the truth? Or just making things up on the fly? What do you mean? Of course I'm telling the truth. To the best of my ability, anyway. I'll admit my memories of that day are a bit hazy. Perhaps that's just it. Pala, I've known you to be a very intelligent person, and I don't think you would forget something like this. But when met with contradictory evidence, perhaps you're convincing yourself your memories are wrong. Is that really it? I remember wearing gloves when I committed the crime. Well, and I thought it was just me who was wrong, because why else would they be there? The thought that someone else could be responsible. That's what was really unthinkable. Is it true? I'm innocent? Yes, I'm glad to say it. You didn't kill him, Pala. At least, you're not directly responsible for his death. He can't be. Thank you, Sophie. I'm so glad. You are? Of course, I never wanted to be a killer. But I was convinced I had to be. After all, I still... Let's not worry about that now. Let's just try to find the truth of who really killed him. I'm even closer to that than you realize, Miss Lang. I really must thank you, you know. By proving Pala's innocence, you have narrowed the list of potential suspects down to one. One? Who? Oh, I think you know the answer to that question quite well. The killer can only be the defendant, Miss Ophelia Payne. Huh? Why didn't I foresee this? After all that, they pinned the blame back on Ophelia again? It's ridiculous. I know it's not me, but it can't be her either. Then who would you accuse in her stead? Explain yourself, Miss Mixfactora. For anyone to kill Dr. Thales, they need the ability to oxidize one or both of the serums. Out of the suspects who were present at the crime scene, only two knew how to do this. Pala Whedon and Ophelia Payne. And the defense has helpfully disproved the former possibility for us. She's charged with manslaughter, not murder, but certain parts of this had to be intentional. Don't forget that there are glove marks on Whedon's syringe which she cannot have left. So far, that has been the case. But recently, Pala gave us a very interesting tidbit of information that will turn this case around. Namely, a motive. A motive? I mean, I have a motive, but Ophelia? No way. That's where you're wrong. Tell me, Paula, Ophelia must have suspected why you quit your job, no? I suppose so. It was kind of an open secret at the hospital. And she would have known that Dr. Thales was responsible? You're not seriously insinuating. I am. The prosecution officially changed its charge from manslaughter to murder. I figured this would happen eventually. It was only a matter of time. But that doesn't mean I'm not caught off guard by it. It only makes sense, really. Wouldn't you want to punish the man who forced your friend to kill an innocent patient? Wouldn't you want to punish the man who built this world of lies? Do I sense spite in your voice? Far from it! I am only thinking rationally, from the killer's perspective. Perhaps assuming that she has a stronger sense of justice as I. When they become so scary? As a matter of fact, this explains away your so-called contradiction from before quite easily. You think your client supposedly swapping the bags contradicts their eventual positions? It is not. She lied to make it seem like an accident to get a lighter sentence. It very nearly worked, too. Then what do you suppose she did instead? Like I insisted from the beginning, she filled both syringes with death serum. Only now I believe she must have done so on purpose. She oxidized both serums, perhaps leaving her glove marks on the syringes in the process. Though naturally, she did not take the syringes out of the bags during this process. So you're not making the same mistake I did. But what about my testimony? What does that fit into all this? You're delusional, that's all. Delusional? That's all you chalk it up to? Is it not clear from the number of errors you made in your so-called confession? I mean, maybe, but there must be some hint of truth to it at the very least. Oh, help me out here, Sophie. I know they're wrong, I just don't know how to prove it. Aren't you not doubting yourself anymore, at least? We're close, I'm sure of it, but Mixed Factoria won't land up on their accusation yet. Evidently! If we want any chance of winning here, we need to find out what really happened. And I can't do it alone. Paula, will you join me? I thought you never asked. Back to this weird side sprite version of me. I still get over how uncanny it looks, but whatever. Woo, feels good to be back at this side of the courtroom. Glad you're finally back. More than you could ever know. But it's futile! I already established that your client is the only possible culprit. Certainly seems that way. Defense, you better have something big up your sleeve. Well, do we? I'm not sure, but there's still a thread of logic from earlier that we didn't finish following. You mean the idea that someone physically swapped the syringes? Exactly. And since Mixed Factoria is throwing out your testimony, it's a thread they let slip by. It's interesting. But follow that thread of logic to its conclusion, we might just stand a chance here. And if you take a, you know what a thread kind of looks like? It all kind of looks like it's a line of logic, isn't it? Exactly. We've only got one chance here, so let's make it count. Oh, never mind. We're doing Brain Blast. What's this called again? Thought Root, right? They're still doing these even 500 years later. Let's start from the beginning. Let me just film to fix the wire. Let's start from the beginning. What the killer would need to do in order to successfully pull off their plan. Namely, to trick Ophelia into believing the death serum was really the immortality serum. Mixed Factoria is the only people who would have known to oxidize the serum to my client and Paula. And yet, the death serum is still red as a fire truck. The killer can't oxidize, so how did this happen? By accident? By accident? Like when Mixed Factoria was arguing with the manslaughter charge? I suppose it's possible. There weren't supposedly very sharp instruments carried with the serums. And no one also wore those glass shards made from the shattered beaker Ollie dropped. But neither of those sound likely to me, and argument for chance isn't particularly persuasive. I don't want us to devolve back into Ophelia getting accused of manslaughter. So let's try this again. There's one root thing the killer would need to take out the details. They mix it with blood. Inject it with the blood from this blood pack? And that might work. The killer wouldn't need to know how to oxidize the serums at all if they just use that. But hang on, didn't we already deduce that the death serum can't have blood mixed in with it? If it did, the Thales would have been greeted with an incompatible blood type. And something like that would leave a side effects noted in the autopsy report, which we don't see. So that doesn't make any sense. There must be another explanation. Let's start from the beginning. Yep, there's someone else oxidizing. Right. It wasn't the killer who oxidized the death serum, it was someone else. But who? Who, wittingly or not, oxidized the death serum? Was it me? That person seems unlikely. Let's think about this again. We know that the death serum was oxidized somehow, but the killer wouldn't know how, so someone else did. Was it Pala? Oh, it actually was. We must accept that there was some truth to Pala's confession. She tried, of course, to inject it with blood, but we know it didn't pan out how she expected. And after all, both serums turned out red in the end, which wouldn't have happened if her plan worked. The real killer swapped the syringes beforehand, meaning she oxidized it rather than bloodying it. Regrettably, this does make her still partially responsible, but not fully, not by a long shot. But I wonder, did the killer plan for Pala's actions? It must be intentional, right? How else have everything turned out so perfectly? But it wasn't perfect, was it? If it was, I don't think both serums would have turned out red. I would risk Ophelia checking both of them, realising something was up. It was the stroke of luck that it all turned out alright for them in the end. Not planning, let's try again. Blah, blah, blah. They did not plan. Of course not, how could they? Pala told nobody about her plan, and there's no way anyone could have deduced it. That means the killer didn't expect the oxidization to happen, and may have been caught off guard by it. Actually, that might tie into some of their actions. Don't know what yet, though. It's interesting. Speaking of the killer's actions, it might be time to think about that swap they supposedly pulled off. When did the killer swap the two serums again? Could be when the beaker broke. If it was before the syringes were filled, it wouldn't matter. Oh yeah, the serums are kept in a storage room in the hospital. If the killer snuck in and swapped them there, they'd easily be able to trick Ophelia. But hang on, wasn't that storage room locked and only staff had the key? I don't see how they get around that one. Let's start over. Taking the killer's actions, what time to think about swap. After we arrived? Sorry, that doesn't seem possible. The whole point was the liquids were swapped before Pala's plan took effect. And if it only happened after we arrived, it just doesn't work. Let's start over. Right, when Ollie and Ophelia were distracted cleaning up the shards, the serums were left wide open. That doesn't quite work, does it? Considering Ophelia also swapped the serums later. I'm trying to get ahead of it and try and work out what happened. So... remember, the killer just swapped the syringes, but Ophelia swapped the bags and everything in them. If that's really what happened, Dr. Thales would have gotten immortality serum like he wanted, and lived. He's dead, so how many times were the serums really swapped? It would have to be thrice. Which would mean that the final swap would have been done by Ollie. Maybe? Just one? That doesn't make sense. We've already established the killer had to swap the syringes before Pala got to him, and Ophelia swapped the bags as she testified. She wouldn't have lied about that. So there had to have been at least 2 swaps. Let's start over. Only twice? It doesn't work. Like I said, the serums will just end up back in their starting place. But does Thales will be happy and healthy with the immortality serum in his veins? 4 times he's excessive, but outcomes raised aside from how does that even work? I don't think so. It goes back and forth and back and forth. And this serum should end up back at the starting place. Any even number of swaps has this property. So the Thales will be happy and healthy with the immortality serum in his veins. It was 3 times. There must have been 1 additional swap besides the 2 we knew about. That's how the death serum ended up back in Thales' hands. Or bloodstream in this case. Technically, any odd number of swaps greater than 1 would work, but Occam's razor. The simplest answer is usually the correct one. I assume the one behind this 3rd swap was also the killer. No one else makes sense. But then comes the next question. When did this 3rd swap happen? It would have happened before we arrived at the excitation after Ophelia's swap. I don't think it can be after Ophelia's swap. After Ophelia's swap, I don't think there's enough time. She performed the operation very shortly after moving the serums. There was no opportunity between those 2 events for the killer to put in and change things. I assume the one behind this 3rd swap was also the killer. No one else makes sense? Can't have been before we arrived, I don't think either. Before we arrived? No, that doesn't make any sense. If both of the killer swaps occurred during the same time frame, that accomplishes nothing. There has to be some difference between the circumstances around those swaps. Otherwise, what's the point in even swapping again? I assume the one behind this 3rd swap was also the killer. After the excitation. Right, after Pala oxidized the dead serum to turn red, of course. In that case, the oxidization must have activated rather quickly, close to the 10-minute mark. But seeing as unoxidization happened by accident anyway, it's not like any plan relied on it. So Pala oxidizes the death serum to red, oxidization was activated rather quickly. Oh, I bet I know why the killer decided to swap the serums again then. If the oxidization really wasn't part of their plan, it could have confused them as to what happened. They might have seen the red death serum in Thales' room and thought it was the immortality serum. Thinking their plan failed, they may have tried to swap the serums back into place. Obviously I can't prove any of this, but it seems pretty convincing. So we have the when and the why already. Putting aside where, who, and how for now, since I don't think I can answer those yet, what specifically was swapped during this 3rd swap? Maybe this time was when the labels were swapped. And that labels being swapped is what made her swap the bags. Oh no, it was the bags. I was just going to say that as a joke answer. And the labels in the bag, so this is where you're finally relevant. Or not, it's true that it explains the inconsistency with Ophelia's testimony, but the whole point of the 3rd swap was it moves the serums. If you're just swapping the labels, the serums stay in place, so it's something else. So when and the why already. The syringes, I think there's no straightforward way to go about it, but wait, isn't there something from earlier this fails to explain? You took on the inconsistency with Ophelia's swap compared to the bag's position. It's the only time either the bags or the labels were swapped, and the bags would read the exact opposite of what we found them as. So the swap has to involve the bags, either the bags or the labels to explain that. So we have the when and the why already, so what's the bags? I unintentionally got the right answer, I'm trying not to. Of course it was the bags. Not only does this explain that earlier inconsistency with Ophelia's account and the bag's positions, it also explains the glove marks found in the bags themselves. Now the only thing left to do is find out the identity of the person who performed the swap. The real killer. So is it Ollie Anderson? Mix Factora, if you don't mind, allow me to reconstruct the events of the murder as they happened. This ought to be good. If you think you can offer a better explanation than mine, then go on, but I do not have high hopes. Thank you. It began with the shattering of a beaker. This is what provided the killer the opportunity for their first bit of meddling. They seized the moment while the serums were unguarded, swapping the syringes in their bags. So it could be Ollie. If, he did it while Ophelia was distracted. As far as Nick was concerned, this was the end of their plan. However, something unexpected happened. Someone else was at the Dr. Thales' life. That will be me. Precisely. He planned to oxidize the immortality serum and inject blood to mix with the death serum. Not because of the swap the killer performed earlier, it was actually the reverse that happened. The immortality serum was mixed with blood, while the death serum was oxidized. The killer noticed this discrepancy, of course, the only way they could have, by checking the death serum that was now in Thales' room and seeing its shiny red colour. Thinking their swap was not performed correctly, they made yet another swap, this time of the bags themselves. However, something was still wrong, something my client saw right away. Not only was the serum in Mr. Whedon's room red when it was meant to be a clear death serum, the label on the bag would have literally read immortality. It'd be hard to miss that. So Ophelia made yet another swap, inadvertently dealing the fatal death serum to Dr. Thales. So there were 3 swaps in total, you see. Back and forth and back again. Interesting, but I have a question for you, Miss Lang. I acknowledge your client is not considered responsible in this timeline. After all, she performed the swap without knowledge of what was in those syringes. But what of Miss Whedon? Without her causing the oxidization, Dr. Thales wouldn't have died at all. Unfortunately, this is true. However, you must think about it chronologically. When Pala tampered with the 2 serums, immortality was in her big brother's room, and death Thales. Were nothing to change from this point, Ophelia would still swap the serums. Due to one in Mr. Whedon's room still being red, this would have given Dr. Thales the immortality serum, saving his life. I see. It was only because of the killer's second swap, this third swap of sorts, that he died. Now you're getting it, Your Honor. The worst I can be charged with is attempted murder. Though I contributed to his death, I didn't directly cause it. That was the real killer's doing. Precisely. Would that you couldn't be charged at all, but... A fascinating theorem, to be sure, but a consistently flawed one. Since you went chronologically, I will list my issues with it in chronological order as well. Oh boy, here we go. Firstly, you insist that the killer's opportunity lay in the distraction caused by the shattered beaker. Need I remind you that was an accident? Random chance? They cannot have relied on it. Unless you say the killer had no plan and merely acted in the heat of the moment. I don't think I can say that, at least not with certainty. Then if it was planned, what a nonsense plan it must have been. Only swapping the serums with no colour changing would be found out immediately by your client. And remember, the oxidization came from Pala, according to you. The killer didn't predict it in advance. Then maybe the killer's aim wasn't really to kill Dr. Thales. You'll have to prove that, with evidence you don't have. Thirdly, to have realized that oxidization occurred, you say the killer locked in Thales' room. Now I'm starting to suspect him even more because the killer's aim wasn't really to kill Dr. Thales. Of course it wasn't if it was solid. Without him noticing! Are you daft? Actually, that part's easily explained. Had you been in to see Dr. Thales at all before the incident? Just once, right after I met the 2 of you in the hallway. But it was just to drop off the immortality serum, that's all. Dr. Thales was sleeping, so... Just like our old friend Mr. Whedon, it seems Dr. Thales took a nap. How convenient! And unfalsifiable! But that's fine. We can operate as if that is definitely true, for all I care. I know you claim the killer's opportunity to enter the victim's room was that shift change. However, if they also had to swap the bags with the adjacent rooms, the shift change would have died down. This calls into question how the killer could have swapped the bags without being seen. That's the question, isn't it? Finally, and most damning of all, you cannot even name the culprit you claim committed the murder. Without that, your theory is as good as a plastic bag in the wind. Damn it, not good. Unless I'm wrong, can you indeed name this true culprit you're so fond of? I can, but no, I don't think I can. Not yet, anyway. Then what are we meant to do? Well, the holes Factora poked in our theory. We look like Swiss cheese. I don't know. We don't have the evidence to refute them, that's for sure. And? What do you mean? It's just not your style to only rely on evidence at all times. If there's a lot of problems that need resolving, then do a lie. The best way to tackle all of them at once is with a logic lie deduction. Am I right or am I right? Hey, now you're thinking with portals. Or logic lines. Mix Factora, you're right. I can't name the real culprit yet. But that will change very shortly. Get on with it! This, my final logic line deduction, will give me all the clues I need to figure it out. To name who killed Dr. Thales. This is it. We're really homing in on the truth now. I can feel it. And it all ties back to that third swap, when the killer slipped the bags after the oxidization. Mix Factora claimed it couldn't have happened. The killer would have been seen moving between the two rooms. But I wonder, is that true? Simultaneously, it was considered the identity of the killer. It pains me to say it, but there are really only two possible suspects. Namely, Mr. Whedon and his pupil Ollie. Can't say I distrust either of them much, but it has to be one of those two. It might be a mistake to consider them on their own, however. After all, those two suspects have a very strong bond. That teacher-student dynamic they have going on seems almost like farm family. How about they protect each other in any way they could? But what if they couldn't? Well, those are the two things I really wanted to focus on. Now it's time to dig through the recesses of my memories to find something that could help us. Once you feel like you've got everything out of life, you can ask the hospital to put you to rest. If all your paperwork is in order, and your family has agreed to it, then it should be a pretty clean process. One little needle's all it takes. I remember, the family has to consent to the patient taking the death serum. That's why Paula had to be there for her brother that day. She was the only family he had. Speaking of her brother, didn't we find something interesting while poking around his room? A vent, I wonder where it leads. It should lead into the next room over, right? Also, that's why we had to examine the thing. Which is room 203. Aha, the victim's room. There's a vent going between the victim's room and the only one small enough would be Ollie. Between the victim's room and Mr. Whedon's room. But it seemed too small for me or Pal to fit through, so how could it be relevant? And that's all the information we're gonna get. No holding back now. It's time to connect these dots. Or contradict them. Or find a causal relationship between them. Whatever. So the swap after the death serum was oxidized, but before Ophelia swapped the bags herself, the killer must have swapped the bags containing the serums between Thales' and Whedon's rooms. The vent connects up the Thales' room to Whedon's room, too small for real power to fit through. Family consent. All living family members must give written consent to the patient choosing to take death serum. So it's fun, Ollie and Whedon have forged a very strong connection. They do anything to help each other, but could they? Will that be a connection? I think.
Eureka!
Mix Factora, if I remember rightly, you said my theory of there being 3 swaps was a total crackpot. I don't believe I used language that harsh. Good idea for next time. You dismissed it on the grounds that the killer would be unable to perform it without being seen. I am pleased to report that is not the case. You found a workaround? Indeed, and it couldn't be simpler. How did the killer walk through the crowded hallway without being seen? False premise. They didn't use the hallway. They used the vent connecting the victims and Mr. Whedon's rooms. A vent? Why is this the first I'm hearing of such a thing? Maybe when they typed this bit out, the was on the end of the slide. Because when there is at the end of a line and then at the start of the next line, your brain can sometimes read over it. And sometimes when you type out on the editor, it appears slightly differently. It simply wasn't relevant until now, Your Honor. But you can check any floor plan of the hospital. Such event exists. I'm amazed you'd resort to this. You do realize how small that vent is, right? No reasonable person would argue that the killer would crawl through such a minuscule space. Well, the killer would have to be of a very small stature to pull it off. Stature, I mean. Smaller than me? It was too tight a fit for either of us, remember? Shorter than Paula? I didn't know they made people that short. Even your co-counsel admits it. It's ludicrous to argue the vent was used. That's not quite what she said. What is it, Sophie? You have this look on your face like you're on the brink of a revelation. Maybe I am. I think I have some clue who the killer may be. But something's stopping me. I don't have the necessary clues to accuse anyone just yet. Need something more airtight, do you? Yeah, there's one more hole that needs patching first. That's a good thing we know how to sew. There's actually something I'm curious about. Just two random ones. I want to see the failure dialogue. I believe this will finally illuminate the truth of this case. Funny, I believe it's nothing more than last-ditch meaningless drivel from a desperate attorney. Interesting how our opinions can differ so wildly. Don't feel so blue, Mix Factoria. I happen to know someone who agrees with you. And who would that be? Me. I could use someone on my side for a change. I am? Well, none about that deduction, I guess. That was definitely wrong. Just dandy. I want to see if, because if I go to the previous one... Yeah, it has the same failure dialogue. Anything changed? Next up to Theos's and Mr. Whedon's room is too small for me or Pal to fit through. Do we connect? These two? No. Well, whatever we have to do, we'll find out next time then. Because we've just about made it to an hour now. Well, that's according to my stopwatch, might not be exact. But, anyway. I've got your number, Ellie Anderson. I was predicting from the very start as well that you were up to something to try and save this guy. And I guess I'm right. Because, honestly, this guy, you know, he didn't do anything. He was just, can I just die in peace? And maybe he'll get his wish after this case, or maybe he'll just decide to stick around to teach the youth like Ollie that you can't go resorting to committing crimes when you don't get your way. Because what are teachers for if not that? But anyway, we'll see you in the next part next week. Bye bye.